Hey everybody, welcome on in. It's time for Clay Shares Live at 5, and we're continuing with Diamond Core Tools Month. All month long, we've had some amazing tutorials, deals, special offers, and giveaways, all sponsored by Diamond Core Tools. And tonight, we have Nikolai joining us, and he is going to do some fluting and carving with the X tools. I'm really excited for this. You know, there's 3 new X tools right here. That's right. And we're going to have a giveaway at the end of tonight's demonstration. And 2 lucky winners are going to get their choice of 3 of the X tools and one of these awesome Diamond Core Tool Sula collab bags right here. That's fabulous prize. So a super huge thank you to Diamond Core Tools for sponsoring this giveaway and this entire month. I know Nikolai has a lot to cover, so I don't want to take up too much of his time because we want to get right into it. So let's head on out to California and see how he's doing this evening, or for him, it's this afternoon. Hey, Nikolai, how are you doing?
Oh, how's it going, everybody? Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, welcome to California. Afternoon, it's hot here. We were just talking about that. So, you know, the weather always plays a role in clay. It's a big deal, actually, because everything's drying out. You know, and since I'm talking about fluting tools, this actually is a good segue because I have a bunch of tiles I'm going to start with. I'm going to be talking about all the X series tools, the fluting tools, and then a couple of the P4 tools. But I'm going to start with some tiles, and then I'm going to get into some pieces. And I'll talk a little bit about kind of the dryness of the clay. And so that's important, especially when you're talking about the fluting tools or any of the carving tools, how they perform, how deep they're going to carve, how sort of easy it is to get into the clay. That's all affected by the dryness and, of course, the weather. So just for example, a lot of these pieces I threw on Monday and wrapped them up almost immediately. And yesterday I was able to trim some, but even just sitting out for, 20, 30 minutes, they're drying out pretty quickly. So I kind of have a whole range of weather hard to kind of a stiff weather hard that I'll show you. And I'll hopefully try to show a little bit of a difference in the dryness of that clay and how it affects fluting tools. So just as kind of like a broad overview, we have 9 X tools. I'm going to bring these in. We have 9 X tools. So it all started with the X1. And so this is a V-tip. A lot of the same shapes, kind of nomenclature, a lot of these common attributes of carving tools, they all apply to the X tools, even though they look a little bit different. If you haven't used them, they carve different, they feel different, they're very smooth, but you do have to sort of recalibrate your hand a little bit. And so I've definitely done fluting tool demos on here before, but I always like to just start with a little bit of a recap of what's the difference between a fluting tool and a carving tool. And just as a stake in the ground, I'm just going to do this is our, a standard P1 carving tool. I'm just going to do a line, just a little groove with a carving tool. So any, I would say like kind of standard carving tool you use, you're going to get, a very crisp groove. Any shape, any size of any carving tool, generally, you're going to get these sort of sharp sides to each of these grooves. And that always looks great. You get glaze that breaks over there. The fluting tools specifically, they sort of mellow out and sort of grade the whole surface. So the groove you get on an X1, for example, is going to be much softer. And so if I hold this up just right, you can see how a regular carving tool is going to have a very abrupt edge, and a fluting carving tool is going to have this very smooth, sort of concave, almost like a burnished transition. And so that is the key difference between your regular carving tools, any shape, size, style, and the X series tools. So it's this extra little burnished edge on there. That being said, you can get all sorts of shapes even within that. So this is the X3. We're going to do a little run there. And if you can tell, there is a square shape in the bottom of that groove. So the X1 is a V tip, the X3 is a square tip. And so just like any other tool, we have different shapes. There's sizes, a few unique shapes, but that's really the difference that you're going to see in actually using the tool, is this kind of like sharp edge and these nice smooth lines. So when it comes to actually carving with the fluting tools, it's important to pull at a little bit lower angle. So the way these are designed and they work really well is once, and I'm going to hold this one really close up, but once this blade, you can see it's carving, once that blade is fully submerged like that, all I did is pull towards me. Now it's fully in there. So now I can carve, and that is what makes these sides really smooth. A lot of the time I've seen folks pick up a fluting tool and they go in, but they don't let it submerge all the way. And so they just end up with a much lighter line like this. So if you're getting something like that, usually it's because that blade hasn't fully submerged under the clay. And I'm using that because it goes under. And once it's submerged, now I'm pressing down on the surface and I can pull it through. Versus if you're just very light with it, you don't submerge it, you're just going to get a very thin line. And that's going to be much more similar to a P12 or P1 or like another sort of V-tip carving tool. So keep those tips in mind, is pull at a low angle. So that low angle is what helps that blade fully submerge. Okay, so
we had a question about the X1 tool, that first one that you carved with, is that made that edge. Is that sharp to the touch? Like, that was the question.
The tool itself?
It said, the question was, is it sharp to the touch? So I'm assuming the tool's sharp, but what about the carve, like the transition?
The transition, I would say the P1, this is the P1 groove, that edge is sharp to the touch. If that's fired bisque, that will be a sharp edge on there. The fluting edges right here, okay. The X series, that is a smooth, that's not sharp to the touch. That's a very smooth, when it's fired, you hardly even tell that there's an edge there.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. And so when it comes to carving, I'm going to do a few lines of each tool just to show you the difference before we translate that to a piece. It's a little bit easier to get a handle on what these are just on like a flat tile, a flat piece of slab. You just get a feel for what those grooves are. There's two main types of marks or grooves that I kind of like to categorize these on. One are like very long actual fluting grooves. And so these will be kind of your typical long straight line. And I'll just do that over this whole piece. So this is a very, typical fluting pattern, just long straight grooves. That looks great. It's very easy to do. I'm going to do that on a few pieces here shortly. The other type of mark is kind of a short scoop. And so you can do different things with them. So the short scoop, I'm going to go in, and almost as soon as I go in, I scoop out, and you end up with this little diamond shaped groove on there. It's literally just a short version of the long line, but you'll see the way that you can use these scoops a little bit differently. So I'll do a short little scoop. And if you see my hand going like this, I'm trying to exaggerate that follow through. So I'll see sometimes every once in a while someone will go in, and then they might just pull the tool right off the piece, just break it off. That will give you, if you can see here, it'll literally break off the groove. So you see all these scoops where it was kind of even, it was the same on the top as the bottom, very even. Now this little scoop right here, that is broken off. And so that happens when you don't follow through with the tool. So in this case, I will follow through, and that is how we can sort of fix that problem. These little scoops, and you'll tell right here, a very common technique, it's easy to start with on fluting, is just overlapping them like this. So I did a line, and then in between each of those, I did another little scoop. This is probably the easiest go-to pattern that looks great every time. I'm just going to do another little scoop in between these. And this one we'll fix a little bit. So it looks a little bit like an alternating kind of diamond shape. Surprisingly easy to do. All you need to do is just practice that little scoop, and then you're just alternating every other one. So I'll do this on a few pieces, and you'll see that it's very quick to cover, a large surface, and it always will look really good. And then you can vary the size of these. So this is all X1. X1 shapes, that's a V-tip. When you get into some other shapes, for example, the X3, I'm going to do kind of a little bit of a kind of in between, some longer lines. Now, all these square shapes, I think when you layer them like this, they kind of look a little bit like a basket weave. So I'm going to do a few lines here. So the square shapes, they start to look a little bit more like a woven basket. So you can go horizontally, vertically, and then we'll get into a couple other more complicated things, but not by much. These are just very simple grooves. So again, super easy to do. We'll put that one there. And then the X2 here, this is a U shape. So this one is going to be just a very standard kind of a fluting U shape. And I'm going to do the same overlap. Just like that. So it's very soft. Compare that to the X1. So X1 has these really sharp, pointy lines. They create these really nice diamonds. The X2 right here, much softer. So depending on how the light catches those, you can tell like glaze will get in there. X2, very soft, rounded scoops. And then we'll compare that to the X3 here on the bottom, square. So these three, it's just three different tools, virtually the same pattern, the same technique, but very different textures, designs. So keep that in mind as I'm going. Those are the three, I'd say, easiest, most common. As things keep going, the X4, and I'll do this one a little bit, is a much smaller square shape. So you can kind of repeat exactly what we did with the X3, but just smaller. And this one's going to, this one is nice. If you have a kind of a flowy glaze, or you layer some glazes, they will almost run in these grooves like little rivers or channels. And so if you were to do some kind of long sweeping grooves, that's where that glaze is going to run. So this is the X4. Put that there. The X5 is a small little, it's a little U. So I'll see if I can show this here, but you can see there's just a tiny little dip in that blade. And so that creates just a small, it's like a miniature U shape. And so I'm going to do a couple just like long grooves so you can see it. That's the X5. So you can see it's much tighter. It's just a small little U, but you have these same very smooth edges to them. So when this is fired, you're not really going to have an edge for any glaze to break on. It's all going to just go over this edge and pool right into that little groove. So that's the 5. So is the 6 is one that's very similar to the 2, but it has a little crease in it. So kind of in between a 1 and the 2, but it's a very sort of wide, sort of soft, but you still get a little bit of V shape to it. And I'll hold this up. So this is the X6, just like that. So you can really tell with the shadow when the light is just right. You can definitely see the V. So that's different than the 2. So the 2, you just have these a little bit rounder, softer. The X6 definitely has a V shape to it because of that point, but it's not as exaggerated as the X1. And so hopefully you can see a little bit of the difference there, but the X1 over here on the right, very sharp points, sort of a very extreme little groove, whereas the X6 it's much wider, it's still softer, but you still have these triangular points everywhere. And I'm just kind of calling attention to those shapes, those points all the time, because that's what's going to give you the overall sort of vibe of the piece, all the shapes you're getting. 7 is a very large square. So the 7, and I can show on one of these pieces, I like to use the 7. It's such a big groove. You can't do a lot of detail with it, but it's really good for sort of outlining things. So a lot of the time I will do just a single line and it gives you a very nice square groove. Again, not a sharp edge here at all. So this is the edge that is very rounded over, very smooth. With the right, you can actually see it's almost a little bit burnished. And so that's the X7. And if we just come in at 90-degree angle, what's really cool about the squares is you can do grooves like this that sort of match up or sorry, like kind of butt into each other at different angles. And you get a very clean little beveled edge on all these corners. And so when you do that over a larger piece, you end up with very neat and tidy lines. And so I'll show you on that. And again, this big square, I don't do a lot of little carving. I try to do more, again, sort of geometric straight lines, but you end up with really nice beveled edges. I'll sort of rotate that around a little bit. So that's the 7. And then, so the last 2, these are a little bit unique. They're 2 of the most popular. 8 is what we call a double groove. It actually has a little W shape in there. And so this one, as I'm carving, I'll hold this up. This one is going to make a double line with a little ridge in the middle. You can see it's a double line. This little ridge in the middle is very thin. It's like a really sort of skinny raised ridge in the middle, a little bit different compared to the X9, which has a little bit larger bump. The X9 is probably one of the most popular tools I've ever seen people pick up when they use it. It's surprisingly, people are drawn to it. It's also the hardest X tool to use, unfortunately. So everyone goes for it. It is a little bit tricky, and that is because it needs to be extra low. And so a lot of the time I will see people grab it and just do a quick carving like this. They end up with two little bits of clay and a line that just doesn't look that great. What you really want to try to do is go low and allow that blade to submerge itself. Again, going back to that beginning tip, allow that blade to submerge itself, and then you get the intentioned groove here with a sort of rounded bump in the middle. So again, that is the X9. Right now I'm using flat tiles, so it's kind of hardest to do on a flat surface. But if you imagine you have a curved piece or a cup, that's even easier to use the X9 on. But just take note that when you're using it, make sure you're at a low angle. You let that blade fully submerge itself, and then you'll get a really clean line out of it. But it's neat because you get this double line. So that's the 8 and 9. And the last two, I have to throw these in as a bonus just to talk about, is the P4s. They are technically a fluting tool. They're over in the P tool category, but they have this unique blade. These are also, I've talked to a lot of people. They're very popular. It's kind of a shrunk down miniature version of the X tools. So they don't go as deep at all. You end up actually with these very, I gotta hold out the right angle. It's very light, very faint. You don't see it. It doesn't quite do the same thing on the edges. Right here, this edge of that groove is going to end up a little bit sharp. Like you'll feel it. That's different than the X tools that will actually feel soft and rounded on the edge. The fluting tool will, or sorry, the P4 tools will still have a little bit of an edge, but they make a very sort of buttery, clean, very soft little line. The V version just has a little bit of a V into it. And so I'll do a couple little ones there. So that is the P4 and the P4V. These, again, in person, I see people playing with all these tools, and they're really drawn to the P4, P4V just because of the size. It's a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay, so these are all the shapes, and I'll move them over there. Now, how do we translate that to a piece, to an actual carving? And so I have a bunch of little stuff, and I actually just threw a lot of these little tiny little guys. And so I thought these would be fun just to kind of show different patterns, different shapes really quick. What's great about the fluting tools is you can create a lot of interesting designs in a short amount of time. So they're big carving. It doesn't, you're not spending hours and hours on each piece. You can do it in a matter of minutes. So I think the easiest way to start, and this is a very basic pattern, is I'm going to start with the X2, and here's my little piece. Keep in mind your thickness. This is probably maybe just a little bit above 1/8 of an inch. You want it to be just a hair on the thicker side. These are, you do have some depth with these grooves. They won't go too deep. So you can't accidentally carve through your wall unless your wall is just that thin. It's different opposed to like the P1 or other carving tools that you can just keep going deeper. The fluting tools will not keep, they'll stop themselves from going deeper. So as long as you have a little bit of depth, again, I'd say 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch, even 1/4 inch would be plenty, way too much. These tiles are about 1/4 inch and maybe a little bit more, and I'm not even getting halfway through. So just kind of keep that in mind. If I end up going through the wall on one of these, I'll show you. So I'm going to start with the X2, and I'm going to go all the way around just with a little scoop. So remember, there's a difference between the long line and the little scoop. I'm just going to do a little scoop starting at the base of each of these. And once you find the right way to hold it, just like that. That's all I'm doing. Sometimes it takes a little practice to get your grip right. And I'm just lining up with the old one. So I'm just going to go all the way around just like this. And I'm trying not to make it very long. And just because I'm holding this, it can be a little tricky, but I'm not trying to come up very far. So I'm really only coming up maybe 1 inch or so, a little bit less. And I'm just going to go all the way around. And then notice, like, as I'm going, it's creating this really cool triangular pattern around the edge here. So I'm using sort of the edge of my piece. I have a little bit of a corner here. I'm using that, and it's creating this little like gear shaped thing. But all it is just a little scoop at a time.
So a question about the X tools. Do they only work with smooth clay or do they work with clay with grog?
You can use them on clay with grog. I'll say they're better on smooth clay, just because these edges, the sides, they will get much smoother with smooth clay. Obviously, this is a porcelain, I believe, so it's the smoothest. But you can totally use them because of how like big of a chunk or sort of big of a groove that it makes. You can still use it on a groggy clay, and you'll get this overall texture to it. So I'd say you can use it. I would recommend starting on a BMX or a smoother clay just to get the hang of it. And then once you got that feeling down, then you can practice on a little bit groggier. So there, I made it all the way. And with something this small, I don't really worry about like spacing too much. By the time you make it all the way around, you just have a little piece you're taking out. So even just like that, this is one mark, one tool. I'd be happy leaving it like that. It's a very quick, easy design with the right glaze. This would look really neat. I'll show one way to just add a little bit more flair to it is there's all these little triangles that it creates. So I'm going to go back with the X1 into each of those triangles, and I'm going to do another little scoop. And so this is what's really nice about the fluting tools and any any V-tips, U-tips. The way you combine any shape of tools is you're looking for these little shapes or triangles in between. So I'm going to start there and do a little scoop just like that. So I'm starting in that triangle and I'm just doing that short little scoop. So I'm going to go around this way, and it's going to create that sort of zigzag diamond pattern. And that is what looks really cool. So sometimes it's not even what you're carving that looks neat, it's what is left over. And so what's happening in between here is you end up with this nice zigzag. And that is what makes a piece sort of really pop and looks great with glaze. And this is just two tools. So the X2 and the X1, this is a really common, easy, straightforward pattern to do. I'm just going to do a bunch of these little scoops. And I'm kind of going slow because I'm talking, but this really doesn't take that long. Like you could do this in a minute or two and end up with any piece. And what's nice is it works on big pieces, little pieces, kind of any shape. There you go. You end up with a really sort of pretty, simple little cup. Almost any glaze would look good on this. If it were me, I would dip it to kind of about right on that shoulder right there. But the way the glaze is going to break over all these little points, it's just going to look great. And so again, that's two tools, very quick. We'll put this one, move this over to the side a little bit, and I'll go right there. So we'll do another one, and let's try it with the square tools this time. So here we go. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to start with the X7. So this is that large square, this one right here. And I'm going to start the same way. So it's going to be, and I'm just checking my thickness here. I'm going to start just kind of like hooked over this edge, and I'm just going to pull straight back, and it's going to make a groove like that. So similar to the V-tip, or sorry, to that U-tip that I did, but you end up with a much wider sort of square groove. And so this time I'm going to, instead of going right next to it, I'm going to just move it over a little bit and kind of put the corner of the tool right on the edge of the line. And that's how I'm going to get my spacing. And then we'll do another pull. So what this creates is it kind of creates this like rectangular little knob right there. And that's what we're going for. So that I'm going to space this out, and we're going to go around the same way. So this is just a little scoop. We'll space it out. Notice as we're going around, you still get that sort of gear shape, but this one's a lot more rectangular, a lot more square. And that's just because of the shape of the blades. So we'll do a little scoop. And this clay, I can tell this is one of the pieces that may have sat for just a second too long yesterday in the heat. It's a little bit stiffer. I know it's a little bit hard to show that, but it's a little bit drier. The fluting tools like to be on the sort of regular leather hard. You know, a lot of the time we talk about like refrigerated chocolate or a little bit stiffer leather hard for carving. The fluting tools are on the more wet side. You know, I still don't want to, like, if I were to push in and it left a big fingerprint, that's a little too soft. You don't need it soft, but just kind of keep in mind that they're, you know, you want them to sort of glide through really easily.
So which one would you recommend to someone if they're a beginner and they just want to get one to start trying this technique?
The X1, without a doubt, just the number one right there. So, and that was that. You can do a pattern like this all day long. This is, yeah, that was the X1. Very different technique. You can do a lot of cool stuff, and again, you just need that one tool to start. All right, so we made it all the way around, and I'm going to go back again with the same tool, but now it's going to fit into each of these little rectangular shapes. And so I'll start it in there, and we'll do another little scoop. And this whole technique, all it is just sort of alternating. Doesn't matter what tool you're using. All I'm doing is making a mark, going back and alternating. And you can kind of start to get the feeling that it's, you know, it looks similar to that last piece, but that square shape gives it a much different feel. So you get a lot more of these little rectangular bits. Right here, there's almost like a big ledge for, as glaze runs, it's going to pool right here, versus in here, it's going to kind of shoot down this channel. So what will end up happening is you kind of start to get a feel for it's like topography over the surface of this piece. So glaze is coming down, you're going to get a really big sort of drop right here that'll probably stop on that little ledge. And then you'll have this little sort of river right here of glaze that will go down. So a lot of the time what I'll end up with is just these little drips on each of these little rivers. And it you know, you have really even spacing. It looks really cool. And so that's just how you can use sort of like the texture and some different simple techniques to sort of carve these things. So this is like some square tips. This is some V tips. We'll put these aside and grab another piece. So this one, there we go. I'm going to do this one. I'm going to use the X5 on this, and instead of doing little scoops, I'm just going to do simple lines. So if you, and I'll do it again later with the X1, but if you just have one tool and you just want to see, well, what is the essential part of fluting, I'm going to start on that corner, and I'm going to pull it straight up and just sort of taper off. And I'm just doing a single line, just like that. So this is kind of a very just simple fluting groove. And I'm going to use kind of the width of the blade, that spacing, and I'm going to do another one straight up. And I'm just going to do this all the way around. So this has no no real pattern to it. All I'm doing is just fluting, and you'll see it's going to end up, it's really going to kind of make this little modern, cool looking cup. So we'll go up, and the only practice this takes is kind of tapering off right here at the end. I don't want to disturb the rim too much, so I'm just doing a sort of a straight pull and then taper off right there at the end, just so I leave the rim the way it is. And this piece is kind of that perfect dryness, so these little strips that come up, they just kind of fall off. It feels like butter. You're really just carving through butter. That is how I would describe the fluting tools. So we'll keep going.
So I know you're doing a lot of straight line carving, and we've had a few questions from folks asking if these tools work well for curved lines and which ones would be best for that.
They do, and I'll do that one next, actually. So they do work for curves. You do have to keep in mind you have to do a little bit bigger curve. So it's kind of like driving a truck versus driving a little Mini Cooper. Like you got to take your turns a little bit wider. So this is a straight line, sort of fluted cup. Very comfy. All this is just straight lines. So we'll set that in there. Let's do the same thing, but just with some curved lines. So I have another little one. And so this one, I'll use that X1. So if you're looking for just one fluting tool to start with, the X1 is great. What I'll do here is you can start anywhere, but I will do just some like big sweeping curves. Let me adjust my grip here. And this is a smaller piece, so it can be a little bit trickier, but you can do curved lines. And so again, because it's lower, you just need to take like this turn. It's a little bit harder to like turn on a dime. So that's the only thing that you have to kind of think about. But any kind of big curves like this, no problem. And I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to kind of interweave them and do like a big arc there. And so you end up with a kind of a very flowy
It's
pattern.
beautiful.
And so right here, I'm just going to try to stay away from that rim just because it does get a little thin, but I'll do a little curved line. And whenever I'm doing, so like curved patterns like this, I try to get some main shapes going across, and then here we'll go from right here around here, and then you can always go back and kind of fill in the little gaps. But this is just a fun one. Looks very flowy, very watery. So like here's a spot right there. We'll just do one for a little part in the middle. We'll do some short little pieces. And then any little like corners like this, you can do a tighter corner. You just have to practice, like kind of stabilize. And sometimes it helps to turn the piece along with turning the tool. Like right here, we'll do just a little swoop. There you go. So this is kind of, you can totally do curves. Your radius, you just have to kind of keep in mind your turning radius is a little bit larger. But very different effect than something very straight like this little scoop. So that's how I would say is like your big curve kind of swooping lines. Pull another one here. So this piece is a little wonky, but this is actually a lot softer. And so this one, which one would be fun here? I'll do a, let's do an X4. So I'll do a little bit of everything on this one. So X4, we'll do some curves, but I'm going to do kind of the same curve each time. So rather than sort of random curves, I'm just going to do a little S shape on each one and go all the way around this way. And the only challenge here is how to hold the piece. That's kind of never ending issue, but do a big S curve. So in this case, I have curves. They're the same way going all the way around. And then let's go in with the X3. And so we'll do like another short little curve, and then we'll run into this one here. So a little short curve, and we'll kind of like run into that existing one. And so this will create like a little, almost like a little wave shape. And on each of these, just because it's kind of a tight space, I'm rotating the cup and the tool at the same time. Like that. We end up with just a neat little pattern. And for the fun of it, let's add a, so this X6, so there's a spot right here that it kind of leaves each time. I'm just going to do one scoop right in there. And add a little bit of curve to it, a little bit of corner. There we go. And then just for fun, we'll end it with an X1. Let's just do a, we'll start in this triangle, and this time we'll sort of swoop the other way. We'll go in. And this piece is much softer, so it might be hard to tell, but I'm just holding it a little bit more delicate. I can feel it actually bending a little bit. And so that's why these blades are cutting through much, much easier. There we go. So, you know, any kind of little patterns, again, little curves line. This has a whole bunch of those little short little scoops and some curvy lines. We'll set that one there as well. So let's do one with the X8 or 9. So these are those two. They're a little bit trickier to use, but we'll get her in here. So the 9, and this is kind of what I'm talking about, where on a flat slab, it's a little bit harder, but because, for example, of this edge or like the actual curve of the piece, it's much easier to get depth on here. So I'm going to go in and do that. So this one, I still want to be low to the ground, but it's a little bit easier to sort of keep the blade submerged. And so I'm doing, a very similar thing of just little curves like that. It's going to leave you that double line each time. We'll go all the way around. just like that. And maybe we'll add a couple little short pieces, and then I'm going to come back with the X8. So you can see these lines, they have a little bit wider part in the middle. The X8 is going to be a little bit smaller overall. So that will kind of work to come in here in all these little spots. And anywhere there's a little area. So overall, this is making a very, it looks like kind of a cat had its way with it. Like it just it looks like a lot of these little grooves, but everything's actually very smooth. So that's one thing remember about the fluting tools, they're going to end up very smooth. So even though this looks kind of sharp, all these little edges, like all the, everything's almost burnished smooth. So we'll do another swoop there. And on a lot of these, all I'm doing is just trying to kind of fill that space, not trying to plan anything out. Very easy to go with. We'll do another little loop there, and we're almost around. We'll do one more little piece there. So that is the X8 and 9. So we'll just kind of compare that to these, for example. So, one of them, you just get a lot more lines, a lot more detail. Keep in mind how glaze is going to look on that. And then if you did it just straight vertical lines, so imagine you'd get all these little grooves, all these little ridges going straight up. So it really depends. Again, it's really easy to do. I'm not drawing anything. I'm not actually making like you're not drawing a butterfly or a flower. You're just making marks. You're just kind of going to town on a piece. And almost no matter what you do, I don't want to guarantee it, but almost whatever you do is going to turn out looking really cool. You just kind of have to go for it. So, I know we're getting close on time. Are there any other questions or things that we want to see on the fluting tools? There's a lot of different designs here.
Yeah. So folks were asking how long do the blades last? Like I know they're self-sharpening, so you don't have to ever sharpen them, but they will eventually wear out. I've had that happen on a few tools myself, but only because I carve so much.
Correct. Yeah. You have to carve a lot. I gotta say, you really gotta carve a lot. On the fluting tools, especially, you're not making a lot. There's not a lot of mileage on this piece, I would say. So if you think about how far each little groove is, there's not a lot. So they're going to last you, again, depends on the clay a little bit, but tens, if not hundreds of pieces. And then again, no sharpening. You just got to put a new blade on. But yeah, they're really easy to go. I almost consider these as more of a beginner tool than some of the other tools that Diamond Core has, because it's really easy to use. You can't go too deep. It's going to almost carve itself. And once you get the hang of it, you can make a lot of really neat patterns.
And I think we got all the questions I was trying to answer as we were going. Someone wanted to know, why do you put the cups upside down when you're done carving?
So I dry them all that way. So that,
Okay.
Yeah, I just think it helps even them out a little bit.
All right. If you folks have any last questions, and the X series tools come with one free blade at purchase. So, yeah. And the tools are color coded. I noticed that on the handles you have, the little grip on there. They're color coded, so you'll know which one's which.
Yeah, your X one is always yellow, so always go for the yellow one.
All right. Wonderful. All right. So I think we're all set, unless anybody has any last minute questions, because we have to do a giveaway.
Oh man, go for it. You're getting a whole set of tools and a whole bag.
I know. And I'm sad that Diamond Core Tools Month's going to be over for this year. But there's always next year. Plus, Clayshare Con is coming in February. So I know Diamond Core Tools will be a part of it. And I hope you will be too, Nikolai.
No, we'll see. It's yeah, you don't have to wait a whole year, so it's
I
good
would,
to split it up that way. So,
yeah, absolutely. Oh, glazed pieces. Do you have any glazed pieces you could quickly share?
I do. Yeah, here's a
All right, we
got
got
some
we
brushes
got
in
a
it.
few minutes. We can go
Here's a good
over
one.
the.
So this is I just have this one here. This is a great example of the fluting because, and if you can see here, this is like an X4. So these are all those square grooves, and you'll see how the glaze actually just pools and runs right in there. So it's literally like a little river. And then the width of these, this one's a little bit narrower. And then here's like your V-tip, which is just a very narrow little edge there. So this sort of like translucent blue, I know I've shown it before, that shows the fluting grooves really well. And so this is with a little bit of carving, and then just some very basic straight lines, and then some curvy lines and everything. So this is, I kind of keep this piece on hand just as a quick little example of what the fluting grooves would look like. I don't know that we have a like a little scoop one. Oh, but here's another neat one that we have on the table. These are the fluting tools. This is a good example. You can kind of see it. It's very soft. So there's no hard edges anywhere on these grooves. The whole thing, it almost looks like a stuffed pillow in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of quilted looking.
Yeah, kind of quilted. That's a very standard effect of the X tools. We'll hold it there. So, yeah, I think that's all I have right here on me. But that's what you're going to get with them is a lot of these, that same thing. That glaze will just pool in these little divots.
Wonderful. And a lot of folks are really enjoying your tutorials and they're enjoying watching you carve. Now they can follow you on Instagram, separate from Diamond Core Tools. Of course, follow Diamond Core Tools, but you have your own Instagram if folks want to see your work.
Yeah. You can go to check out. So it's Bushcraft Studio. So Bush, I'll say as in the beer, that's kind of the way, but BUSCH, craft with a K. So go follow me. I'm doing demos and throwing, and I might work on a few live streams here and there. So if you enjoy watching me, this will be my last demo with Diamond Core, but I'm not going away. So, go follow me on there and you'll definitely see me around for sure.
Awesome. Nikolai, it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for being with us this month and all of your amazing demos over the years with Diamond Core. And of course, we're going to have you with Diamond Core if you want to be, if you're with them, or if you're going to do it on your own. We'd love to have you come back.
No, we'll see you. No, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. So
all right. Thanks, Nikolai. Thanks a bunch. All right.
Fabulous. So many great demos this whole month, and you can go back and watch them all. And if you're new to ClayShare and you're just finding out about Diamond Core Tools Month, we have done this, gosh, I don't know how many years, like 6, 7, maybe, I don't know. There's years. So you can go back and watch a lot of Diamond Core Tools demos with Nikolai and some with me. And there's just a lot of really great stuff on there. So there's an archive so you can dig back through and see something new that'll spark some inspiration or creativity. Now we're going to do a giveaway. And if you're new to ClayShare, the way you enter our giveaway is you just go to clayshare.com and you sign up for our email list. And that's it. It's really easy. If you are a premium member of ClayShare, you're automatically entered. You don't have to do anything at all. No one has to watch to win. You just sign up and we email the winners. And that's it. That's all. Simple, simple. So tonight we are giving away a prize package to 2 folks. It is a set of 3 of the X tools, and this is a great prize. The Diamond Core Tool Sula bag. So this is a collab bag that Diamond Core Tools did with Sula, and it's an amazing little tote bag, and it has a crossbody strap too. So you could use it as a bag for your pottery tools or any of your craft supplies, or just it's a really cute tote bag. So if you just love the bag, you could just use it for your purse, honestly. So the first winner tonight is Jill Lansing. Congratulations, Jill. You get yourself your choice of X tools and the Diamond Core Tools Sula bag. Congratulations. And then the second winner tonight is Ann Diaz. Congratulations, Ann. You too get your choice of Diamond Core Tools, X tools, and Sula bag. Now, well, Nikolai, I have you still on. Is there a special this week for Diamond Core Tools that you all are doing?
There is, and
If
it is the fluting tool. So I believe every fluting tool is $30.
okay,
I'm looking. I'm
so
checking out each
there's a
$30.
special on fluting tools right now, and
Good. How long is that good till? Does that go till Sunday? To Sunday off the X tools. So if you didn't win and you want to pick up some X tools, there's a special on them, and you don't need a code. You just go to diamondcoretools.com and you'll see there's like ClayShare month. It's a big celebration because it's kind of a big deal, and you can get some great tools. And we've been doing it all month long. And if you missed out on the other deals, well, you know, I don't know what to say. Just pick one up anyways because they're such fabulous tools. So if you've been watching, you know we did a embroidery-inspired Mishima inlay tutorial a few weeks ago using Diamond Core tools, the Diamond Stylus tools, and those pieces are out of the bisque, and here they are. So you know what that means? That means we are going to be doing the color portion in a few minutes at 6:15 p.m. Eastern for our class tonight. So if you want to learn how to do this technique, tune in. If you're a member of ClayShare, you get to watch this class. That's part of your membership. If you're not, you can go ahead and sign up and join us tonight for your first live class. Then access the, are you ready? Thousands. Yes, that's right. Thousands of classes that we already have on ClayShare. We've been doing this, we're in our 8th year of this, so we do a lot. And, you know, we got something for everybody, so come along and check it out. All right, so we're going to end this so I can get ready for the next class. Thank you so much to Diamond Core Tools for another fabulous ClayShare Diamond Core Tools month. Huge thank you to Nikolai. We wish him all the best in everything. And we'd say we're going to miss him, but we're going to still see him. So we will kind of miss him, but we're not going to miss him because we're still going to see him. All right, everyone. Going to take a break. I'll be back at 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're going to do some embroidery-inspired watercolor pottery.